Hi friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com again, and I think you're going to like today's video. I'm going to be comparing three decks. The Hess from 1750, and I've done a full run through of it by itself. This particular one was curated by Giordano Berti. The second deck I'm comparing it to is another German deck, a Tarot Besançon, which is slightly different, right? Also curated or published by Giordano Berti. And then the last deck I'm going to compare is the Claude Burdel, which is a facsimile deck created by Yves Renaud. It was created by, I think, a Frenchman. He lived in France, but then he went to Switzerland, and certain characteristics of Swiss decks seeped into this otherwise faithful Marseille style deck. So let me flip the camera and get started. So each of these card makers gives us a lovely presentation. I discussed it already with my other Giordano Berti decks that I've had when I did this video. But you know, we have a nice sturdy box, a beautiful box. You know, it's contained inside of a bag, a pouch. Has a note. If you order it directly from Giordano, you get your name on it. If you order it from a vendor, then it doesn't. And then they always come with at least two instruction booklets. Well, two booklets, one regarding the deck itself, and then the other one addressing cartomancy. Yves Renaud, I've discussed also at length. Sturdy box. Each deck within the box is wrapped in a decorative sheet, which I presume would have been customary for the time. And each card maker presents us with, you know, a little bit of information in multiple languages. Yves has two cards that differs. One is in English, and then the other is in French. And the cards will mention the number. So out of a run of 900, with the Hess, I have number 340. With the Miller, I have 222 out of 900. And out of 3,000, I have 1999. So look, out of the gate, already the three of them are quite distinct. Isn't that interesting? The two German decks present the name as Le Faux versus Le Mat that we have in the Burdel. And in the Miller and the Burdel, they're going in the same direction. And the Fool is going in the opposite direction in the Hess. Now, in my previous video that I did, I mentioned that this would have been the deck of Beethoven, which it might have been. But according to the literature, they cite that Mozart was the one who played with the German decks. I think both booklets claim that, both the Miller and the Hess, I think both claim that Mozart played with those decks. Now, in my previous video, I said Beethoven because when I saw the dates, I was thinking in my head Beethoven would have been, more of an adult at 1750 than Mozart, who I think wasn't even born until 1756. So I would have presumed that probably he would have been playing with the Miller over the this one, or that if either of them was playing with the Hess, it would have been Beethoven and not Mozart because he was a little older. But it was Mozart who we know played with tarot, and it could have been either of these two decks. Okay, so here we have Le Bateleur, or Bateleur. I'm sure either way I'm saying it is wrong. So we see a similarity in posture in the two Germanic decks, right? Because we see more of a roundness that we don't see in the Burdel. Interesting. All three have 3 legs of the table. And I guess this is a good time as any to show the backs of each. Now, of course, with the Besançon, which would have been, I think, the first style of tarot that would have migrated to Germany, and the Besançon would have had Juno and Jupiter. So it's possible that the Besançon was probably the first style introduced to the Germanic countries. However, it's still, both of these decks, the Hesse and the Burdel, predate the Besançon by 30 years. So I guess it's not an ironclad rule. Now, when I showcased the Miller, which I did a handful of videos ago, I was totally in love with the saturation of color, and I still am. But, you know, every deck brings something different to the table. You know, the Hesse, they just have, look at those faces. I mean, those faces are just, it's like they are people who lived life to the fullest, you know. They're robust, they're sturdy people. And you get a sense of their robustness and their sturdiness in both of the Germanic decks. The Burdel, although if it's created in Switzerland, it is a Germanic-speaking country, but it brings with it a little bit more of what we're accustomed to seeing in the TDMs, I think. So we see in the Besançon a blindfolded Cupid. And we see in the Burdel that Cupid faces in a different direction. All three of them kind of face in a different direction. The Miller is more centered. The Hesse is to our left, and the Burdel is to our right. We have a scalloped canopy. Even though this is a different style, it's still a scalloped canopy in the first two, the Hesse and the Miller, and we do not have a scalloped canopy in the Burdel. Now remember, the Hesse is 1750, the Burdel is 1751, and the Miller is the more recent, 1780. Interestingly, we have a scalloped collar too. Look at that. The cardstock of the two Giordano Berti decks are very similar. Real nice. And they have a very slight corner a very slight rounded corner. Whereas the Yves Renaud deck is definitely a sharp edge. I've discussed this in one or two other videos, and I did it at length in my video about Chaucer. If you want to go back and see what I might have said, but you have to watch till the end because I discuss it at the end, where I discuss this little piece of yellow, right in the knee area, is an interesting thing that seems to be somewhat fluid amongst some certain decks. Now, of course, the Miller regarding the Hermit is stepping to the beat of a different drummer. He looks like a distant wanderer. Whereas these guys are more familiar to us as either monks or, you know, people who, I guess monks stay in the prayer, the church, I guess, but maybe friars or wandering, individuals who spread the word, maybe. Not I guess they don't necessarily have to be religious, but it kind of calls to mind that look. And they all go in the same direction. The Wheel of Fortune, we have two going in the same direction, the Miller and the Burdel, with the Hess going clockwise. And the posture of the wheel varies also. I love comparing the decks randomly sometimes. Sometimes I just get a hunch that I'll try some decks from the same period of time. Sometimes I just do random because you never know who saw what, who traveled where and saw what and was influenced by whatever. There's a suggestion of a floppy hat in all three, but this one being more in keeping with what we're accustomed to seeing in TDM. And look at the spelling on the Miller, La Coroque. La Coroque. So could those letters have been that much misunderstood? It was a foreign language, right? This would have been a foreign language. And in this one, we don't have the article. And in the Hess and the Miller, we have a person suspended with the number being correctly written and with the name being upright. And we have the same with the Burdel. In the Hess and the Miller, there's just the individual is suspended by the same foot, and it's different in the Burdel. And the hand gestures are different in the Miller. As we had in the Hermit, the Death card has a different look to him, right? He's got a unusual hat. And in the Hess and the Burdel, we have I think, more or less a customary profile view, even though their expressions are quite different. But in this one, we have more of a three-quarter view of Death's face. And in 2 of the 3, they go toward the right, and in the miller, it goes toward the left. All 3 accentuate the spinal column with blue. It's not too easy to make out what that says or how it's spelt. And here we have temperance ending with an R. So I presume that anytime, the game migrated to a different country and different people were applying what they thought they saw, I think mistakes were made. And I think it's a mistake to say it was, mistakes were always intended to be what they were. I think sometimes they were just mistakes. But who cares? We all know what the cards are. And I think when they played them, they knew too. Unless the mistakes were so egregious, like having 4 of the same number in the trump suit or whatever, I think most people didn't notice or care. Maybe they noticed, but they didn't care. But I can't speak for someone who lived 300 years ago. I'm just putting myself in that situation. So we have three different devils. In this first one in Hess, we have a face in the belly. This guy is clothed in the miller. And in the Burdel, there's neither a face in the belly nor any real clothing. And in the miller in the center, the animals are more, animal-like, like monkeys maybe. So in the miller and in the Burdel, we have the customary flame on our right side, seemingly coming from the heavens. And in the Hess, it's not as clear if it's coming from the heavens or from the cathedral or the tower, but it is showing on the left, our left side. And you guys may also notice things that I'm not catching, which is why I show every card. Sometimes I'll catch things when I'm just looking at it myself, but when I do a video, I won't catch everything, because I have the camera in front of me and I don't see everything except through the lens. See, we have an S in the Burdel. And whatever we have here, if there is anything in the Hess, I can't see it. And of course, in the Hess, as we've seen a few times, there's a mirror image, right? Now in the Burdel and the Hess, we do see the bird. So they do seem to have that same little bird. It's just on the opposite side. They do seem to have the same cluster of stars, right? But in the miller, there's only one tree and it doesn't have a bird. And the center star is indeed different. But we do have the dots that we see in the Hess. Isn't that interesting? So the Hess has characteristics of both decks, or they both have characteristics. You know, they perhaps overlap. I'm not sure. Okay, so the Besançon again, with it had a scalloped canopy, which would have been indicative of TDM1, and it is facing, the moon here is facing us, which is also characteristic of TDM1. There are others, I just never really think to mention them except on the canopy of the chariot and the moon, because those are the most obvious. And although the Hess had TDM1 characteristics with the canopy in the chariot, here we see a profile moon, as we see in the Burdel. And again, it's kind of like a mirror of the direction of the moon, but not of the dogs, interestingly. The dog that's barking higher is in the same direction on all. Wow. And the foreground, if that's a bridge, or I don't know if it's showing a bank, or if it's just showing a piece of the underground, or, you know, or underwater, is different in the Besançon than it is in the other two. And these buildings are more similar. Now we have a very interesting configuration of the gate behind the children in the sun. And we have different names. We have a different name in the miller, or a different spelling. And we have a banner on the horn of the angel in the Hess and in the Burdel, but not in the Besançon or the Miller. Looking at the names. And we have the world card, and in 2 we have the scarf, which we can tell is a scarf. In 1 it's in the C formation, in the Hess it's in the C. In the Burdel it's a reversed C, and in the Miller, who knows? I don't know what's going on there. So in the Miller, in the Miller, we see the right hand coming this way in the way that we would expect. But this really would be a left hand, even though it's coming from the right side. And I have this deck in the wrong order. Let me fix that. Well, it's not so much that it's in the wrong order, it's just in a different order. And then here we have it coming from the left side with the left hand. And the embellishments between the Miller and the Burdel are similar, being reversed. The fruity branch is on the opposite side than what we see in the Miller. And in the Hess, we don't really have a branch that has a fruity side. So I'm going to show them like this. Again, the Hess faces, they just seem like, and look at this king. You know, well dressed, healthy looking. Interesting how they have two fives. Two eights. I mean, the way the number is presented. That's very interesting. I may have noticed it in my other video. Whatever's on his shoulder. Maybe, is that an ermine cuff? Nothing on his shoulder. No hair fuzzes, I mean. Okay, now in the center we see what I am used to, associating with like a Swiss kind of style, right? But we don't have it in the Hess, which of course is German, and we don't have it in the Burdel, despite the Burdel having been printed in Switzerland, and despite the fact that the Burdel did have some Swiss characteristics, but not in the cup. All three are quite different. An elaborate tablecloth here. Very nice. We have the 10th cup facing in the other direction. We'll see what the others do. My boyfriend is here. I comment on him all the time. We noticed last time that the edge of the terrain ends abruptly before the end of the card, which is kind of interesting. We see the black in the ground of the knights, and we saw it in the other the Knight of the Swords too. Discussed at length. I want to see what the other queens have for the Queen of Cups, whether it's a window or the top of a canopy. Hopefully we'll see differences between them. We'll see. I'll keep this one put aside. We have the 10th cup facing in the opposite direction. We very clearly have my boyfriend with the same ingredients, right? The hat in hand, the wreath on head, the tunic covering the cup or the chalice. Nope. No suggestion of either a window or a canopy hanging over for the queen. And let's see what we have here. Ah, you may have caught a glimpse of that. Now, despite not having the very Swiss-looking ace of cups, the cups are very rounded. Well, I guess they always are, never mind. Let's see which direction the chalice is, the 10th cup is going in that direction. So I think the Hess was slightly different. Okay, now here, it doesn't quite cover the chalice. And here we have what looks like a canopy overhanging from the throne versus a window that we see here. Now, I've discussed this many times in other videos, you know, but I think there might be something to it. All right, now we have the aces again. Okay, now this one coming from the left hand, that's drawn accurately. This one, okay, coming from the left hand, I think that's accurate. I mean, as far as being in the left hand. Whether or not it was supposed to be in the right hand and just reversed, I don't know. And then this one is accurately drawn in the right hand, coming from the right side. Now, were the aces of baton and sword supposed to be drawn in the right hand and then they were reversed during the printing process? And did the individuals who did it presumably correctly, and I don't know if it was correct or not, but presuming that the instrument should have been in the right hand, is it in the right hand because they allowed for transferring when it was printed, or was it just that they copied it this way and by happy luck it was transferred, and so by accident it ended up being correct? I don't know, and we'll probably never know these things. Okay, we'll do the batons quickly. And we do see some discrepancies in the way the numbers are written between the 6 and the 8, but the 9 is more accurate. Oh my gosh, how do you not love these colors? They are so luscious. So delicious. And then we have what I always call the Swiss batons, which look a little bit different than the others. And the lettering on the Burdel is more accurate. Well, she says, and then we get this one. So this one's a little off, but on this side it's correct, and this side it's off, and this side it's correct, or maybe it should have been this way, I don't know. In this case, this side would be off and this side would be correct. And we do see in some decks this kind of blanket over the horse, which in some TDMs gets very confusing because maybe it's not treated as one blanket, it's just treated as I don't know what. But I think here we can tell that it's just like a blanket or a covering. And the last suit. I've done videos on each of these decks by themselves where I showcase them by themselves. So if you wanted to see more thoughtful presentations on each of them individually, if you have the patience to search my playlists, you'll find them. And all three are wonderful in their own way. Look at that lovely chair back in the back of the Queen of Coin. He's got like a white mustache. And the last deck. Now look at that 4 of coins. And I often will say it when I see it, and we see it in the Gassman too. It looks like a party, doesn't it? You know, I can't help but interpret this card in this particular deck and others that look like it, you know, with, you know, horns blowing and, you know, streamers coming from the chandeliers and just a good time. And that's why I you know, when I talk about doing readings and demonstration readings, that you interpret the deck, right? A 4 of coins of another deck won't give that feeling to me, and so I won't say those things. But if I'm if I'm doing an interpretation and I see this card and it's about the possibility of a celebration or will it go well, and I see this, I'll be like, yeah, it'll go well. Or it's got the potential to go well, resulting in a celebratory feeling. So there we have it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I thank you for being here. And until next time, friends, peace and stay well.